Welcome, tennis fans, to the sixth episode of Tennis Traverse, Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, Ivy J. In today's episode, I will be doing things a little differently, and I will be giving you guys a guide to attending your first tennis tournament. But before I start, please make sure to follow me on all of my social media platforms, that is Instagram and Twitter, using @TennisTraverse, that is @TennisTraverse, as well as give my podcast a rating on a platform you're using to listen to my podcast right now. If you're listening on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video, and comment down below how I can improve my podcast or just some comments you have on today's episode. Without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. So, before I actually start today's episode, sorry for all of the delays and social media plugins, I want to give a brief overview of the China Open that is happening right now. So, the China Open takes place in Beijing, and it is the final 1000 WTA tournament this year. So, as a result, all of the top seeds for the women's side are here, such as Iga Swiatek, Aryna Sabalenka, and Coco Gauff. And a lot of ATP top players are here as well, even though it is a 500 tournament for them. And surprisingly, there's a lot of interesting matchups for a lot of the early rounds. So here are just some interesting matchups that I think you guys should look out for. Two of those that I mentioned will already be taking place, and you guys already will be able to know the result. The first one is Lorenzo Musetti versus Carlos Alcaraz. So this is like a dream matchup for me because I always loved Lorenzo Musetti, and he's playing against arguably one of the greatest player right now, which is Carlos Alcaraz. So this is going to be a great match, and Carlos Alcaraz really has been struggling with his form, and this year really has been the best for Lorenzo Musetti as well. So I'm really excited to see what this matchup will bring us. The next one is Rune and Grigor Dimitrov. So both of these players I really love. However, I want Dimitrov to win just because he is kind of older than Rune, so there's less chance of him winning another tournament. So I really just want to see him win another tournament to hopefully make his career just a bit better. Now, here are just some potential matchups on the women's side that I think you guys should look out for. One is Coco Gauff and Iga Swiatek's rematch. The last time they played, Coco Gauff actually won despite suffering 7 straight losses. And because Coco Gauff is doing really well right now due to her win in the US Open, I'm really excited to see this matchup if it happens. The next one is just anything from Carlos Alcaraz, and for me it's just Casper. I feel like because there's a lot of top seeds attending the tournament, it is a great opportunity for people who really weren't that much into tennis to hopefully pick up a new sport to watch. Okay, now without further ado, let's actually get into today's episode. I just want to start off with saying how I got the inspiration for today's episode. So, because I actually attended the China Open like 5 years ago, so before I actually played tennis, I went to the China Open every year and my mom would take me, and that's how I actually got into tennis. So because I just went to the US Open and now the China Open's happening, there's a lot of nostalgia for me, so I figured why not just make an episode of a guide to attending your first tennis tournament. And I hope that this guide will cover most of the things you guys should be aware of and some prepare work you guys should do before actually attending your first tennis tournament. Well, of course, there's a disclaimer. I won't be able to cover everything because there's just so much and it's really personalized how you want to go see your tennis tournaments. So this is just a brief overview. So the first step you should do if you are a tennis beginner where you just don't know the rules of tennis is you guys should go watch a YouTube video of the rules of tennis. I feel like it's really important to know how the game of tennis works so that you can just enjoy yourself there and just know what's going on. And I will leave a link to a YouTube video which I feel like explains the rules of tennis really well. So feel free to go check that video out. And again, if you don't know a lot of tennis players in general on the professional tour or just really isn't that much into tennis, you guys should go to the WTA and ATP website, which I will link down below, to look at the rankings. So if you click on the rankings tab, you'll see who is ranked number one in the world right now. So currently it is Carlos Alcaraz for the men's side and Aryna Sabalenka for the women's side. Another way for you to understand what some of the players are like is to just go through pictures of them. And I know a lot of people tend to find players they find cute and then just go watch their match. And in my opinion, actually a great way for just wanting to get into tennis in general. And after you figured out the players you like, please take down notes of who you want to watch. And here are some tennis etiquettes that I think are essential before attending your first tournament. So it actually, I feel like this depends on the tournament. For example, the US Open is really chill. However, Wimbledon is for the royalty side, so of course you have to dress accordingly. And another important point is you should only clap in between points, not during points, and you're expected to remain quiet when the players are in the middle of the point, but you can feel free to just scream and shout between the points or during the changeovers. And another point I would like to make is don't clap when a player makes an unforced error. That is an error that could be easily avoided, such as double faults or just some easy ball that the player accidentally hit out or into the net. It shows that you have respect for the players. And now here's how to choose seedings. So if you really just want to get a sense of how the tennis tournament is like, you can go on cheaper days. That is when the tickets are actually cheaper. So it is for the first few rounds to see your favorite player. And if when you check the schedule of the courts, you see that your favorite player is actually on a less popular court, then just book that court because it's cheaper. And if you're lucky, you can actually get autographs or selfies with your favorite player because there's less people. And this is just specifically for US Open, but there's a week before the main draw begins that is called US Open Fan Week. And you can go there every day from, I believe it's Tuesday to Sunday this year for free. And you can just see qualifying matches and players practice on court. And it's super cool and super chill because there's not that many people there and you can get autographs and selfie again. However, if you want to go during the main draw, you can get a ground admission ticket. This means that you can look at the practice courts, well, not the practice courts, but just some outside courts that are not in stadiums. And you can't go into the stadium because you don't have a reserved seat. An advice for me is to definitely get ground admission tickets during the early rounds because a lot of good players that actually get put into the lower courts, such as the courts outside. So you get better seats for a cheaper price and you get to see your favorite player up close. So it's a win-win. However, if you just want to see the top seeds or just players that are really good and are really famous, then I suggest you go buy stadium seats or the final seats. So these are on sale before the tournament actually starts, so you can buy them earlier and according to your calendar, plan out when you can go or when you can't. And if you're buying stadium seats, buy behind the server seats, that is seats that are just behind the players, if that makes sense. So you're not looking at the court horizontally, but you're looking at the court vertically, because that way you can actually feel like you are actually on the court because the ball is coming towards you and you can get a brief idea of just how fast the balls are, in my opinion. And It is also important to look at the items that are prohibited. So when I went to the US Open by myself for the first time, I didn't look at the list of items that are prohibited at all, and I brought a backpack, which I had to gotta save in like a bag saving area, and then I brought cash, but US Open is actually a cash-free tournament, so I had to insert my cash in a machine, and the machine spitted out a credit card for me to use. Okay, not gonna lie, it was kind of cool, but it is really important to check items that are prohibited because you don't want to go through what I went through and just go around the tournament grounds to find a place to get rid of your prohibited items. Oh, so if you're going during summer or when it's hot, please make sure to bring sunscreen because I went this year and on the first day of fan week, I actually forgot to bring sunscreen and I was so sunburned. And make sure to bring a Sharpie if you want players to sign on whatever you want the players to sign on. You can bring a notebook, you can bring like a regular tennis ball that you hit with, but just bring a Sharpie because even though a lot of players actually have Sharpies or the tournament gives them Sharpies, it is best if you have one just in case. And on the day of your tennis tournament, I suggest you take public transportation to get there because, from my experience at the China Open and the US Open, parking is extremely difficult. So, for the US Open, I actually just took the Long Island Railroad to get there, and I just go off straight at there's like a US Open point, so it's super convenient. And because most doesn't have parking spots, it's best if you could just, for example, take a bus or a subway and then walk even though there's no direct stops. Also, a lot of tournaments have this, but I suggest you download an app or go on their website because there's a lot of practice schedules or just matches schedules on there. And even though the tournaments do have just like big digital boards that you can look up and see like who's practicing, who's playing matches, it is super easy to just access them on your phone. And also make sure to bring a portable charger. This just came up on my mind, but a lot of tournaments doesn't have portable charger stations, but the US Open does, but it's just important to bring one just in case. So once you've arrived on the ground, just look around because there's a lot of activities that you can do. There's not just only tennis tournaments, there are a lot of sponsor booths that you can go to, and feel free to get the food there, even though it is often quite expensive. And look at merch because just to keep it as a memory. And I actually brought ducks for the US Open. So I have like two small like shower or like baby toy ducks that actually have US Open written on it and then there's a year under it. It's super cute. I only have two and I'm planning on collecting them every year. However, keep in mind it is actually quite expensive, so just manage your wallet wisely. And the other thing is the staffs are often really nice and they understand you if you just get lost often because the US Open ground is actually the biggest tennis ground in the world. Well, not just the US Open, just any tournament in general. The grounds must be really confusing. So ask the staffs. And from my experience, they're really nice and they know where to go. And if you really want to get the full experience and spend some more money, you can buy a tennis jumbo ball, which is a huge tennis ball that is like super super big. And it have basically the tournament on the big tennis balls and a lot of kids like to carry it with them to get players autographs, but to be honest, I really don't think of it as a wise way to spend your money. You can just take selfies with the players and if you want autographs, you can just. I bought different caps because I feel like it's easier to carry around and it have the year on it, so it's just better that way. So I let the players sign on my cap. Also, this is a safety reminder because there's a lot of people in general wanting to get autographs from famous players. We're just wanting to interact with them. Please make sure to be safe and if you feel any sort of uncomfortableness, please make sure to tell someone. And a really insider tip, I don't know. It's like if you really love a player and you want their autograph, make sure you have good relationship with the security there. So a story time, but actually Casper was practicing on court 17 at the US Open, and I was really familiar with the security there because I went there like every single day during fan week, right? And he knows me really well. And I told him beforehand, I was like, I love Casper Ruud and he's practicing, so I really want his selfie. And what the security guard did was he actually stopped Casper in front of like huge crowds of people so I could get a selfie with him. And actually I went with my friends that day, I think, and one of them actually got an autograph. So it's just super cool to, I don't know, get on the inside of the tournament you're going to. Just make sure that you have a positive mindset going into it. And it's okay if you couldn't get the autograph or the selfie you wanted because there's always next year, and just enjoy the experience overall. Speaking of going with friends, some of you guys may ask if it's wise to go alone or with friends or with family. I feel like each of those is a different experience. I went the first 2 days of fan week alone, and because I am sort of knowledgeable about tennis, so I just went wherever I want, and I saw some players that maybe if I went with my friends or family that won't be interested in. And when I went with my family, however, it was super fun because I got to show them around the sites and they got to get autographs from me, which is super funny. And I went with friends, which is super cool too, because we talked about tennis in general and I just miss them because US Open for me is during the summer and I haven't seen my friends for a long time during the summer. So yeah. Okay, I think this sums up today's episode. This is actually quite different from all the episodes I filmed. I enjoyed this one a lot because I got to use my experience to tell you guys what to do and what not to do at a tennis tournament. And keep in mind that even though I mentioned a lot of things that you guys might think are specific to the US Open, I'm just using it as an example because this is the tournament that I am just most familiar with. And I know that most of my viewers or listeners are actually in the United States. So please feel free to listen to this podcast when the tournament of your country is coming up. You can re-familiarize yourself with all of the things you should look out for when you're attending a tennis tournament. Thank you all so much for listening. Please follow me on all of my social media platforms, that is Twitter and Instagram, using the @TennisTraverse. I am more active on Instagram, so definitely go check me out there. And if you have any suggestions, DM me or email me. And if you're listening on YouTube, please make sure to give my video a like and subscribe. And make sure to leave my podcast a rating if you want. And that sums up today's episode. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.